Hey, what is up? You all see him. It is your friend Damien Howard here with another Village Talks segment. And I'm going back to Cali today, as I have been for a few of these previous sessions, to meet with a new friend, Dr. Nate. Dr. Nate's going to jump in here in a moment and tell us more about UIC, but I just want to give a little groundwork as far as what you all are about to experience. Village Talks is a podcast that's oriented around this idea that many of us already agree with, that when the village not only rises up, but actually comes together, creates synergy, and start finding ways how we can get beyond our silos and think about what does it take to really help our kids to thrive, then we are that much better positioned to give them the resources and give them the love that is required for them to be successful beyond elementary, beyond high school, and be, for the totality of their lived experience. And Dr. Nate and I are the type of people that believe this work even has implications beyond their lives, all right? So it's just a very fascinating opportunity for me to meet this new friend who is going to unmute if he's not already unmuted and introduce himself to our viewing audience today. Go ahead, Dr. Nate.
Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Nate Landis. I'm the founder and CEO of Urban Youth Collaborative. We're a group of churches that serve public school students all over the country and in Mexico and in Ethiopia and East Africa. We believe in the unlimited potential of young people, and we want them to discover God's side of the story for their narrative, for their life. And we do that by hosting motivational faith clubs in schools. We focus on urban communities where young people are dreaming big and have to overcome obstacles. And we want them to know nothing can stand in the way of their potential when they take the dream that God's given them and they align that with their vision of what ought to be. Then we know great things are in store. We've been at it for 17 years and are dreaming of the future as we keep expanding nationally and internationally. We don't want a kid to go to a public school in any country and not discover that there's a God who loves them and who has an incredible dream for their life that they can discover if they surrender and follow him.
You know, I really appreciate you, Doc, because it feels like in my brief time of knowing you, a lot of how you think and a lot of how you show up resonates very deeply with my belief system. As you know, as somebody who did your homework, I am a guy who's seminary trained. However, since seminary, my mission field, if you will, and or my work has been the same type of work that you're doing. It's
Right?
yes, I absolutely want young people to grow their own relationship with God, knowledge of, might I specifically say for my faith belief system, knowledge of Jesus Christ. I care about that. I would say I also care about holistically their development. And a lot of
Right.
the ways that I show up is looking at their grades. Here in my city, we also want to know, are these kids staying safe from violent crime? So I want you, Dr. Nate, to just jump in there and help me to understand a little bit more of your inspiration to ensure that when you show up and your work shows up, when UYC shows up, these young
Right.
people that you have deployed internationally, working with their peers, leading groups, like, why do you all have such an emphasis on the holistic development of young people?
Well, we're whole people as humans. We're made in the image of a triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we're body, soul, and spirit ourselves. So we're complex and interconnected in that regard. And when we go into a neighborhood, I think of it sort of like when I went to Boston for divinity school. We talked about a professor from Harvard earlier today, and you recommended his work. I was at Gordon Conwell, so not too far away. I got to take one class with Dr. Cornell West at Harvard. So that was fun before he moved over to Princeton. And when I was there in Boston, when I went to certain sections of the city to see the Irish Catholic section of Boston, I was able to walk the streets, see the pub facade, see the restaurants, see how they set up their neighborhoods and set up their relationships and organize life. And then after I had been in divinity school for a few years, I got to travel to Dublin and I saw the way that the city and the country was set up from its origins. And then I see how the next generation of people that were living in the US set up their neighborhoods and street corners. And if I took photos of Dublin and took photos of parts of Boston and you put them side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. Why? Because they set up their home here to reflect their true home where they're from in Ireland. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? If we're people of faith, our true home, my passport, if I reach in and hold it up, says the United States. But we know our ultimate identity is I'm a citizen of heaven. Like that's I'm dual citizenship. And one day I'll have only the citizenship of heaven. Right now I'm a dual citizen. So as we walk the streets and live life, we're setting up, that's our job description, life here so that it reflects life in our true home where we're from. Where I'm from, there are no tears. There are no poverty-stricken neighborhoods. There's no healthcare shortage, no illness. Divorce lawyers will have to do new job training forever because they'll be, you might say, well, our divorce lawyer is in heaven. We can discuss that later offline. But whatever we're doing, we're bringing that reality of heaven into our neighborhoods here. It might be approximate, it might be partial, but we're supposed to be that foretaste that makes you want to eat the whole meal. We're supposed to be that preview that makes you want to watch the whole movie. And so for kids that we're working with, we're saying, man, if you're an identity bearer of Christ and you have that as your true nature and you've been reborn in that way, then your true heaven identity is what you bring to earth into your relationships and your situations. And so that's why we're holistic, because in heaven, I like to have fun and just be like, there's no more tears. Kleenex will be bankrupt and Tylenol will be out of business. Drug dealers will have no market because, they won't be able to convince you to exit your reality because your reality you're living will be worth taking in its fullness forever. And so there's that sense of who we are that we bring into how we show up. And that's what I think makes UIC effective. And the church partners and student leaders we're working with are living out the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we're hoping to see in our relationships and in our communities that we're active in.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I was trying to remind myself of the professor's name, and I found it right there with your last statement, Dr. Amy Sherman. Last I knew, she was at Charleston, Virginia. She might be somewhere else right at this point. But anyway, she wrote a book called Kingdom Calling, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but
Yeah.
Charleston, South Carolina, I'm sorry. And in that book, I was just fascinated by the way that she talks about the Baskin Robbins little pink spoons, right? And we'll go in there. They got what 31 flavors, if I'm not mistaken, and it's just like, hey, I don't know which one I want, so you can get a
Right.
foretaste,
Right.
a little bit of the butter pecan, a little bit. And man, that visual came back to mind so profoundly as you were giving your example of what you think in many ways we're called to be and do and offer
Right.
here through our programming and our initiatives. Man,
Yeah.
I appreciated that so much. I feel like here in this space, we keep talking about the village and the importance of the village. I would
Right.
love to hear your perspectives on how does the village show up as it pertains to offering people that pink spoon, that
Right.
foretaste, that glimpse of the ideal that's not yet, but already to some extent is here.
Yeah. Well, when Jesus called his first disciples, the very first lesson was that we had to be humble enough to call for partners. And I remember that story of Jesus out on the waters, and he's calling fishermen, and they had been up all night fishing, and they're burned out, they're exhausted, and he says, "Throw your net out on the other side," and they start catching all these fish, and the boats start to sink. So the first lesson of a disciple is they had to be humble enough to call out for others to come and help, or else the fish that they're supposed to be caring for were lost. And they clearly represent people in that story. So the first lesson of following Jesus was be humble enough to call for help. Be humble enough to say, hey, this is so much bigger than me. I can't do it on my own. I can't be a stakeholder holding all these different parts of the net myself. I need you. I need others. So that's where we're a part of a team. We're a part of a family even more than we're lone rangers or flying solo. And that was the lesson in discipleship, was coming to care for others. And then another part of that story is the beauty of all of the diversity in that net. There's two catches of fish miraculously in the Gospels when Jesus called Peter the second time after he died and came back and had to reinstate Peter because Peter denied him and felt like he was lost. And Jesus said, no, you're back on mission. I'm reinstating you. I can forgive anything. That time, Peter went and caught fish again, and there were 151 different fish in the net. And some people are like, wow, that's just real good eyewitness specificity to tell us it really happened. Probably. There's also a theory that I heard that I think is plausible. Excuse me, that there were 151 different species of fish in the ancient Near Eastern Mediterranean ecosystem. What if it was a miracle catch? The nets didn't break that time. What if God was showing Peter, excuse me, that the community is going to that God's forming through the church is going to be so beautiful and diverse that one of every kind will be included, and the net of grace is strong enough to hold everyone together. So that's the vision I think of, is we have to be humble enough to call to partners. That's the first catch. The second catch is you're going to get people caught up in your life that you're not expecting, people that you're not going to meet otherwise, people that are not going to have any reason to get together except for God's work in all of us. Because those fish weren't planning to be caught that day. It was something bigger than them pulling them in. And that's what we're all caught up in if we're following God in a city. We were caught up in that net of grace, and it's strong enough to hold us all. And we have to get used to lots of people that aren't like us, and we're swimming in the same waters, doing life together. So Damien, another joke that I tell because we're in public schools is I say that Jesus called us to be fishers of men and women. And
Yeah,
we have to remember that fish always travel in schools. Thank you. I'll be here all week.
that's
People
funny.
can mute me. But that's the missing insight in our churches these days, is that we think there's a separation of church and state, and the village is divided because we don't realize we can come together. If a club is student led during non instructional time and voluntary to attend,
Yeah.
then you have a bridge between the church and the state. And if you know which keys work on those doors, you can go in and out and make a super impact that is holistic, because teachers and administrators that know what really is going on in the lives of kids and on the streets and families, they know that they on their own can't meet all the needs.
Mhm.
And there's a resource called the 40 developmental assets, where you can sort of measure in a kid's life
Mhm.
if they have a mentor, if they have a safe place to eat or sleep at night, if they have another caring relationship. Like if you have a school hitting on all the cylinders, the Search Institute put this out. Maybe they can get up to 20 to 25 of those 40 developmental assets in a kid's life, and that's best case fairy tale scenario. Schools and leaders that really have it together know those 40 assets require a village. They require other community-based partners. For us, it's local churches connecting with schools in meaningful ways, organizations like us. Then kids have more measurable, intangible, yet vital assets in their lives.
Mhm.
Like I'm talking about a relationship, calling it intangible, but
Yeah.
it's vital. And the more of those you have in your life, the better your chances of success in every measure. And we need to be able to do that together, because otherwise we're only going to have piecemeal success in the life of a kid, and they're too important to leave to chance or to leave to sort of solo practitioner work.
You know, and everything that you just said, and all of it, brilliant, beautiful. And it's brilliant and beautiful because you're a storyteller and you paint a picture in our minds to help us really understand what it is that you're articulating. But in all of the colorful, um, kind of like paintbrush swaths that you just did with your rhetoric. The biggest thing that I took out of that is in order for all of that to happen, we have to understand that there's a bigger picture, that
Right.
there's a bigger work at play, a bigger responsibility that
Yep.
in many instances even predates us, right? And was
Right.
even in motion before us and will continue to be in
Yep.
motion
We
after us.
inherit
Yes.
what's been going on, and we leave a legacy as
Yeah.
well. And we get to control. I've heard it said you have your birth date and your end date,
Yeah.
and that date and that dash in the middle is the life we have, and we have to make it count, and we get to choose how we spend it. And we are inheriting and passing off every day.
So one other thing about those fish is that they do travel together and that represents a school of fish. But sometimes, fish stink. And maybe they don't think they stink, but some of us who have to then go and do the cleaning and the nurturing and the development, it's kind of tough here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using this probably not the best metaphor, but there are certain instances where you're trying to work and you and or the students that are mobilized trying to work with other young people, and they're just absolutely not trying to hear about this God thing, this Jesus
Right.
thing.
Right.
They're not trying to collaborate in any way because they're just off put for whatever reason based on
Right.
how you all present yourself in those circumstances and situations. Whereas again, like there's just challenging dynamics that you
Yeah.
all have
Right.
with young people that you all are trying to reach, families that hear about what y'all are doing, and they're just like,
Right.
oh, wow, are y'all trying to indoctrinate my kid with a thing?
Yep.
I can only
Yep.
imagine in 17 years, there have been instances of these type of things
Absolutely.
that
I
you've
do
had to
an
navigate.
Instagram devotional every day at
Yeah,
Dr. Nate Landis, and I've gotten called everything, like
yeah.
you're trying to institute Sharia law where you want your
Mm.
religion to be one with the state, and the
Well,
you know,
here's the
go
truth.
ahead.
I know that's not true about you.
Of
I know
course.
you as somebody who's going to stand on what you believe, but at the end of the day, it's just like to your point, it's optional. There's an
Yep.
open door here,
100%.
right?
That's
And in the
right.
same way that you have the ability to forthrightly speak about what you care about, and your kids
Right.
have that same ability, it's just like I'm not trying to stop anybody else from doing them, but allow me to do me as well. So how do you
Right.
navigate that, Dr. Nate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Love requires freedom,
Mm,
and God will not coerce anyone into his kingdom. And yet he's inviting and pursuing, and he's going after us. We have to stop running and let ourselves get caught up in his love. And I guess a fish could swim away from the net, no matter how much the net is coming to get him. And when we catch fish, by the way, um, we're calling in the fisherman's story, a fish is alive and then meets us and dies. But spiritually, it's the opposite. We find the stinky dead fish, catch them, and then they come to life in Christ. They get reborn. There's like a reverse result in fishing. While people are fishing in schools, there are other people fishing in schools too. We had a sociologist come and train our team in San Diego, and he told us that every school they studied in the city of San Diego, that's where UIC was born, and it's where I started it 17 years ago. They said every school they studied had a documented case of sex trafficking activity going on at that school. So our staff are coming in as supporters of student leaders, trying to lead kids and recruit them to life. And
yeah.
then there's someone else setting up at a school, trying to groom a kid to reach another kid to invite them into horrific and just devastating situations where they're going to be their life will be stolen, they'll be killed, they'll be destroyed in some way,
Yeah.
literally. And so anyway, we need to have the right people together so we can collaborate for the right goals. And if you find those partners, then it works. If somebody's got a different perspective, and they're not going to be a criminal trafficking someone, but they're just giving us different life perspective, we should all get to make our best case. And
Yeah.
I should be able to present what life with God looks like through Jesus. Someone else should be able to present their side. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the communication event, everyone makes up their minds. And that's the public forum we get in a public school. And I think it's an opportunity. I would fight for the right for someone who disagrees with me to be able to make their case, because
Yeah.
I believe that the case for Christ is so compelling that it will hold the day. And then at the end of the day, somebody else chooses to do something else. We'll keep loving them and we'll keep inviting them and we'll go after them. And God respects people enough to let them choose eternity away from him. It breaks his heart,
Mm.
yet he's going to give people the right to decide what they do with him and his love.
You know, in all of this talk, if the context is working with young people in a school setting,
Right,
my understanding is most of just kind of any supportive elements that are brought into the school to support schools should result in greater academic achievement, should result in the culture and climate improving, should
right,
result in kids having a better sense of their identity. And with that sense, again, it is helping them in a way to mature into kids who thrive academically, who are going to be great adults, whatever it may be. So
right.
help us to understand for people who are struggling with this conversation, what are
Yeah,
some of the wins when you all show up? How is that helping kids? How is that helping schools to be better?
right. So it's like we said earlier, the 40 developmental assets, we can add some of those to a school's ingredients they can mix into the life of a kid. And there are some principles that'll be like, man, we're not faith-based, but we see the change in the lives of kids, and we know that they need this. And at the very least, we're glad they're using their leadership gifts to fulfill what they think is important. One example, I came to a faith club one time. There was a school down the street from where I lived in Southeast San Diego, and they were having lots of fights. Kids kept pulling the fire alarm, and then they would have to do this mandatory evacuation. And as the evacuation was happening, kids from different gangs and different neighborhoods would like start finding each other and beating each other up. So the school had no other way to solve this. So it was very interesting. The Faith Club moved from this small classroom to the quad outside in California. You're outdoors, so there's this big gathering spot in the grass in the middle. They had a circle, and a vice principal brought a megaphone out to one of the student leaders, and she started talking to her friends. She started inviting them to live differently and respond differently. And even if you don't agree with Christianity, I think we can agree that not harming each other physically is a bar we can all say yes, let's do that. If we don't all agree on some things, we can say, what if everyone in our neighborhood had access to food? What if we had economic opportunities? Those are things that we can say yes to. So she starts talking to her friends, and then she closed in prayer, and she asked for God's presence, peace, and power to fall at the school. And you could feel the atmosphere shift because it wasn't coming from grown-ups. They expect grown-ups to make the right choices sound good. But when you have a kid saying that, it's so powerful. And so that's how it helps. It helps academically, it helps with the culture of the school. And then this principal came up to me afterwards and she goes, were you taking photos of that circle? And I never met her before. I knew she was new. And I said, yes. She goes, may I have them? I thought she was confiscating my phone. I said, yes, I'll give them to you. You caught me. And then she goes, I want to put them on the school's website.
Wow.
And I said, oh, wow. I said, that sounds wonderful. Her name, I won't say her name on the air, but I
Yeah.
said, that sounds wonderful. I said her name and I said, just so you know, I do this for a living. I recommend it might be good to say it was student-led prayer at the
Yeah.
school. And then the football coach was standing right beside me. He had a lot of his players in the circle. He said, might be good to say that it was voluntary to attend, that the kids didn't have to come. They chose to join this circle because they didn't know any other options. And so anyway, she looked back at me and she said, man, I'd challenge anyone who has a better way for us to solve the problems at our school to
Mm.
give us a different solution. And she did put those photos on the school website, as far as I know. And that was my first time meeting her. And she's still working with us to this day. She's come to some of our events and said, my whole school's been changed by prayer. And she means academically, she means behaviorally, she
Wow.
means students that are getting relationship education. We help them with their dating and relationships, helping them avoid violent relationships, and then help them align their life goals with their interpersonal choices. And then she also meant that kids are serving in the community. We give out mini grants. $100 mini grant gives a kid on a faith club an opportunity to put all this stuff we've been talking about into action and not to relay to others that grown-ups solve problems only, but it's like I'm a leader now. I'm not just
Yeah.
the church of the future. I'm a teenager who can lead today. I think, Damien, the disciples were probably mostly teenagers. And one of my friends, Greg Steers, says it this way. In Exodus, there was a temple tax due if you were 20 or above.
Hmm.
When Jesus was cornered by the tax collectors, he only paid for two guys. Was that because the other 10 were just AWOL? Or was it a Friday afternoon and the tax collectors decided they're just going to knock off early? Or was Jesus leading a group of teenagers with one adult volunteer named Peter? That's who changed the world. So young people are able to make a difference academically and socially. They look at problems in their neighborhood and say, if God's kingdom came and his will was done on earth like it is in heaven, what would be different? And then they take that money, they put their resources and their team together, and
Yeah.
then they've got an adult partner to go and make a difference. So we can have that foretaste we talked about earlier. It might be approximate, but it lets us know what's real and what we can be a part of if we eat the whole bowl of ice cream.
So here's hopefully we spread it. Okay, yeah, we're gonna leave the metaphors alone. So here is the we're at the part of the segment, right, which is special to me, and I want to make sure that with every conversation I get to this part where, in an imaginary sense, you are receiving a magic wand. With your wand, what are you going to do with it to impact positive change that aligns with your vision of what should be?
That's beautiful. I would love kids to see if I wave the magic wand in front of them. I'd love them to see um, what is, which they can see already, right
Yes.
beside what ought to be. In whatever situation is facing them, whether it's an
Ah.
interpersonal struggle in a relationship, something in their neighborhood, something in their world, and just deep
Mm.
inside that sense of justice, that sense of hope, that sense of purpose that goes off inside all of us. We got that from God. I'd want them to see those side by side and then see their dash, that dash of their life between their birth date and their death date. They can be that bridge between what is and what ought to be. And I would want them to see their life with unparalleled significance and for them to know that the power of the Holy Spirit through Jesus inside of them can let them be the answers to some of those same prayers that their heart is crying out for and that their neighbors and their friends are crying out for as well. I'd want them to know that, and then they can count their days so their days will count if they live that way.
You know, Dr. Nate, we're at a point, unfortunately, where we gotta go ahead and end this segment. My intent every time when I hit record, and I definitely go beyond the recording and publish it. Yeah, I'm trying to do two things. One, I want folks to be inspired, and I absolutely know with the energy you brought, immediately people were like, wow, and they felt that thing viscerally. So the inspiration happened. But then number two, I want there to be education. And there were a lot of nuggets that you dropped. I think a lot of perspective building that we have the ability to grow and or at least to start considering based on a lot of the statements that you said today and the considerations that you made. So thank you abundantly for being a guest, but even beyond that, for your work, for the diligence, for the willingness to say that I'm not going to just be stuck, right? Like you had a student who used to live in San Diego, moved to Atlanta, said, "We want this in Atlanta." It could have been so easy for you to look at your resources, to look at it from a deficit standpoint and
Right,
say,
right.
we're just going to stay here. But
Too
no,
hard. Right, right.
yeah, that the way that you're wired has led you to Mexico, has led you to Ethiopia, and the best is yet to come. So I just wanted to take a moment to offer that affirmation because this has been
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's my pleasure.
absolutely, this has been a power pack 20, 30 minutes that we spent together. That being said, I literally want to hand over the mic to you to give you the final word. With this final word, if there are things that you want to say as far as how people can get in contact with you. I think you started to share a little bit of that earlier. Instagram, I think piece that you have.
Right.
I suspect that you might be active on LinkedIn. However, you want folks to
Yeah.
connect if they're desirous to do so. Please let us know what that looks like. But then further than that, If there's any, again, just final word that you want to offer up, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here. If you want to stay in touch and connect with young people and discover what's inside you and get that out, personal transformation leads to community transformation. And we'd love to talk and have that conversation and walk on a journey together. Like Damien said, we're working in 7 cities throughout the US and internationally, and we're expanding beyond that. If you're listening in Chicago, or if you're checking this out in California or on the East Coast or the Northeast, we'd love to stay in touch. You can do that by going to our website, uyc.org. It stands for Urban Youth Collaborative, uyc.org. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's at Nate Landis. And I do an Instagram reel almost every day about the intersection of kids and faith in Christ. And also, if you are interested in training, we've got books on campus ministry. You might discover this is the best kept secret for your neighborhood. If you're a person of faith, you might be shocked to discover what's really possible. There's a lot of misunderstandings about what's legal and what's not. And I think you'll be pleasantly blown away. And we'd love you to get a copy of God Wants His Kids Back: Schools of Thought to Reach the Lost Generation. That's my first book. And then we have a how-to series after that, video training and hard copy or ebook. So we're at your service. We'd love you to be able to talk with us. And if you want to bring this to your city or community, then let's have that conversation and we'll see what God does.
Dr. Nate, this has been a blast. This is yet another Village Talks episode and segment. I'm so grateful for the viewing audience for persisting with us. And we know once more that you were inspired and educated. And until next time, peace out.